Once, the world belonged to humans. The sun rose for them, warm and bright, painting cities in gold. They laughed, they built, they dreamed, never believing that night could swallow it all. But it did. It began with whispers, rumors of shadows moving faster than sight, of people vanishing without a sound. Then came the screams. The sky turned crimson. And when the sun rose the next day, it rose over a world no longer ruled by men. The vampires had come. They tore through kingdoms like fire through dry leaves. Entire cities were drained within hours. The few who survived were branded, chained, and caged, kept as pets and blood donors to feed their new masters. The world became their empire. And at its center stood the House of Thorne, the most powerful vampire dynasty, ruthless, pure-blooded, eternal. Among them was Prince Rahl Thorne, heir to the Dark Throne. Feared for his intellect and cold precision, Rahl was not like the others. He studied medicine, not war, healing, not hunger. Yet, he was every bit as dangerous, because he knew how to mask the monster within. On his 100th birthday, Rahl was expected to take a human pet, a living symbol of dominance, a reminder of the world that once was. He chose her. Iris. A girl born in chains, scarred by loss, and burning with hatred for his kind. She would rather die than bow. He would rather burn than break her. But fate has a cruel sense of irony. Because in a world built on blood and control, something forbidden begins to stir, something neither vampire nor human could survive untouched. And when love blooms where death was meant to reign, the lines between prey and predator blur forever. The night belongs to vampires. But the dawn may yet belong to them. Welcome to Black Veil. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. The night the vampires came, the sky turned crimson. Cities that once glittered with life were drowned in smoke and screams. Humanity had lived peacefully for centuries, thinking the legends of blood drinkers were nothing more than myth. But myths have roots in truth, and that truth came for them in fire. The vampires didn't conquer quietly. They came as shadows with red eyes, their strength unmatched, their hunger endless. Within days, the human race was broken. The streets ran red, the towers fell, and only a few were spared, not out of mercy, but amusement. Humans became property. Pets. A living source of pleasure and sustenance. Among the survivors was Iris. Her home had been destroyed, her family slaughtered before her eyes. Hatred was the only thing she had left. That hatred kept her alive when she was captured and thrown into a cage, chained beside others whose hope had already died. When the day of the royal selection came, whispers spread through the prison halls. The vampire king was celebrating his son's birth anniversary, and he demanded gifts worthy of a prince. Beautiful humans, they said. Rare ones. The kind that screamed softly and bled sweetly. Iris didn't scream. She fought. When guards dragged her before the royal court, she bit, clawed, and cursed until blood filled her mouth. The vampires only laughed. Her defiance amused them. Then the king, tall and cruel with eyes like molten gold, gestured lazily toward her. She's defective, he said. Dispose of her. But before the blade could fall, another voice spoke, deep, calm, and commanding. I'll take her. The court went silent. All eyes turned to the speaker, the vampire prince, Rahl. He stood apart from the others, his expression unreadable, his gaze sharp enough to cut through her fury. While most vampires bathed in blood, Rahl was different. He studied medicine, sought ways to sustain their kind without human deaths. Many called him foolish, others called him weak, but none dared defy him. Iris glared at him, expecting cruelty behind his quiet tone. But what she saw instead was curiosity. Not pity, not lust, curiosity. When he ordered the guards to release her chains, she almost laughed. He thought she would thank him. Instead, she lifted her chin and spat near his boots. The room froze. Rahl didn't react. He simply looked at her for a long, silent moment, then said, "Bring her to my quarters." That night, Iris found herself in a lavish room, its walls lined with books, glass, and ancient relics, nothing like the dungeons below. But it wasn't freedom. It was a gilded cage. When Rahl appeared again, he spoke softly but with authority. "You are safe here, so long as you obey one rule," he said. Never step outside this room without me. If you do, the others will smell you, and they will not stop. Iris's voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. Why keep me at all? To feed on me when you're bored. Rahl's eyes flickered with something unreadable. You're here because I chose you, he replied. And I don't make choices I regret. She turned away, her hands trembling as she whispered, I'd rather die than serve a monster. For a long while, Rahl said nothing. Then his voice, low and distant, filled the silence. Perhaps, he said, not all monsters are proud of what they are. He left her there, the echo of his words haunting the air long after he was gone. And as the candles burned low, Iris sat by the window, staring at the moon that no longer belonged to mankind. Her hatred burned brighter than ever, but somewhere deep inside her, a strange, unwelcome thought began to stir. Maybe this monster wasn't like the others. Days passed, though Iris had no sense of time within the vampire prince's palace. The walls of her chamber were adorned with velvet drapes and polished stone, yet to her, they felt like bars of a cage. She refused the fine meals offered by servants, refused the soft gowns they brought her. She wanted to remain human, even in her chains. Every night, Rahl came to check on her. He never touched her, never threatened her, and never fed from her. He simply watched. Sometimes he asked questions, his tone gentle, curious, too human for a creature like him. What was your world like, before us? He asked one evening. Peaceful, she said coldly. And better without your kind. He didn't flinch. And yet, you're still alive, he murmured. That must mean something. It means I'm cursed, she snapped. Rahl's gaze lingered on her face for a long moment before he turned away, his voice softer now. Perhaps we both are. That night, when he left, Iris sat in silence, her anger crumbling into confusion. He was supposed to be cruel. Ruthless. But he wasn't. It made her hate him more, because she couldn't understand him. One morning, she heard footsteps outside her door. Several of them. The lock clicked, and a group of vampires entered, ones she didn't recognize. Their eyes gleamed with hunger. She smells divine, one hissed. The prince guards her too well. Let's have a taste. Iris backed away until she hit the wall. The closest vampire bared his fangs and lunged. But before he could reach her, a blur of motion filled the room. A hiss, a crack, and a spray of blood. When the chaos cleared, Rahl stood there, his hand drenched in crimson, the intruder's body sprawled lifeless at his feet. The others froze. His voice was low, dangerous, and colder than death. If any of you ever touch what's mine again, I'll tear out your hearts myself. They fled, vanishing down the corridor. Silence fell. Iris stared at him, wide-eyed, trembling, not from fear of them, but from him. She'd never seen him like that before. His control, the calm she thought defined him, was gone. Rahl turned toward her, his expression unreadable. His fangs were still extended, his breathing heavy. Did they hurt you? She shook her head. Her throat felt dry. You killed them. I protected you. He said. There's a difference. You didn't have to, she whispered. I'm just your pet, remember? He stepped closer, his voice rough. You are not just anything. Their eyes locked, hers filled with anger and confusion, his with something deeper, something he was trying to hide. For a fleeting moment, the world outside that room ceased to exist. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the heat of his breath, the strange, forbidden pull between them. Then he turned sharply, his composure returning like a blade sliding back into its sheath. From now on, he said, no one enters this room but me. You will be safe here. He left before she could answer. As the door closed behind him, Iris sank to the floor, her heart pounding violently in her chest. For the first time since her capture, her fear wasn't of dying. It was of what she was starting to feel. And somewhere deep within the palace, the vampire king heard whispers of what his son had done. The first spark of rebellion had been lit. Iris stopped speaking to Rahl after the attack. He had saved her life, yes, but to her, that meant nothing. Vampires killed as easily as they breathed, and saving one human didn't make him any less of a monster. When he came to see her, she kept her eyes on the floor, silent and unmoving. If he noticed, he didn't show it. He simply left books on her table, food untouched, and questions unanswered. For days, silence filled the golden prison. Until one night, thunder rolled through the palace, and the power went out. The halls grew dark. Somewhere far away, a scream echoed, the sound of feeding. Iris froze. Her candle flickered, and she felt it then, his presence. Rahl stepped through the doorway, his cloak dripping from the storm. His crimson eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You haven't eaten," he said quietly. "I'm not hungry," she replied coldly. "You will be." He set a plate beside her and turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Why?" He paused. "Why what? Why do you keep me alive? You could drain me dry and end this charade." His expression darkened, but not from anger, more like a deep, wounded patience. "Because I don't drink from humans." She laughed bitterly. "Liar. I've spent centuries searching for another way," he said. "Artificial blood, medicine, science, none of it lasts. But I will not feed on your kind." She met his gaze then, sharp, accusing. "You think that makes you better?" "No," he said softly. "Just different." His calm unnerved her. She wanted to hate him, to scream, to curse his name, but his voice disarmed her more than his fangs ever could. When he turned to leave, she whispered without meaning to, "If you really cared, you'd let me go." Rahl stopped. The silence between them stretched thin. "If I did," he said, "you'd be dead before sunrise. You don't understand how much they want you." His tone wasn't possessive, it was protective. That frightened her more than his violence ever had. As he left, Iris stood by the door, glaring at the empty corridor beyond it. She didn't understand him. Didn't want to. But his restraint, it made her question the hatred she'd wrapped around herself like armor. That night, sleep refused to come. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of blood, not crimson and violent, but warm, gentle, a pulse that beat too close to her own. She woke before dawn, trembling. And though she didn't know it yet, something had already begun to shift. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of something dangerous. The palace was colder than usual. The corridors whispered with secrets, guards spoke in hushed tones, courtiers avoided Rahl's gaze, and the air felt heavier, thick with silent judgment. Word had spread. The prince had killed his own kind to protect a human. The king summoned him at dawn. Rahl walked into the throne hall with calm precision. His father, draped in crimson robes and crowned in shadow, watched him from the dais with eyes that gleamed like fire. "You've been busy, my son," the king said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. "I hear whispers that you've grown fond of your pet." Rahl's jaw tightened. "I've done nothing dishonorable." The king chuckled darkly. "You killed 2 nobles in cold blood. They broke the law." "They were vampires," the king said, his tone rising. "And she is not." Rahl said nothing. The king descended the steps slowly, his presence suffocating. "She's a human, Rahl. Food. You've forgotten your place." Rahl's eyes flickered with restrained rage. "If being a prince means standing by while our kind murders for pleasure, then perhaps I've never wanted the throne." The king's face hardened. "Careful, boy. Defiance can sound a lot like treason." When Rahl left the throne room, the murmurs followed him, traitor, fool, weak. But beneath his fury, a strange calm had taken root. He knew his father would come for her next. Back in her room, Iris sensed something had changed. When Rahl entered, there was no trace of his usual composure. His cloak was torn, his hands stained with blood, though not hers. "What happened?" she asked warily. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. "That's not an answer." He looked at her then, truly looked at her. "My father knows about you." She froze. And he doesn't like when I disobey him." Her heart quickened. "Then let me go. I'll disappear. You'll be safe." Rahl's voice dropped to a whisper. "Safe isn't possible for either of us anymore." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. She turned away, anger flaring again, not just at him, but at herself for feeling anything at all. Rahl lingered for a moment longer before leaving. He paused at the doorway, his voice quieter than the wind. If they come for you, he said, run to the library. There's a hidden passage behind the second shelf. Don't wait for me. Then he was gone. That night, Iris lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling. For the first time, she didn't dream of escape. She dreamed of fire, and the prince standing before it, facing his father, unarmed and unafraid. Something was coming. And it would change everything. Iris didn't sleep that night. Rahl's warning echoed in her mind, over and over, if they come for you, run. She waited until dawn painted a faint gray across the curtains, then made her choice. She was done waiting. If she stayed, she'd die as someone's pet. If she ran, at least she'd die free. Silently, she tied the bedsheets together and lowered them from the balcony. Her hands trembled, but her resolve didn't. The cold morning air bit at her skin as she climbed down the stone wall. For the first time since her capture, she felt something that almost resembled hope. But freedom was a cruel illusion. The moment her bare feet touched the courtyard, she felt it, eyes watching. Shadows moved from the corners. The scent of human blood hung heavy in the air. Leaving so soon, a voice hissed. 3 vampires stepped from the darkness, their smiles sharp and hungry. Iris turned and ran. Her heart pounded, her breath ragged. She didn't make it far, one of them appeared in front of her, moving faster than she could blink. A clawed hand grabbed her arm. The prince's little toy, one sneered. He won't miss what we take. She fought, kicking, screaming, biting until her throat burned, but they were too strong. The first vampire sank his fangs close to her neck. And then everything went black. Not from fainting. From the shadow that tore through the courtyard like a storm. Rahl. The world exploded in violence. A blur of motion, the sound of bone shattering, a spray of blood that painted the marble red. When it was over, silence returned, thick and suffocating. The vampires lay dead at his feet. Rahl stood over them, chest heaving, eyes burning crimson. He looked like death itself. Iris stumbled backward, terrified. You killed them. They touched you, he said, voice low, dangerous. I told them not to. She shook her head, trembling. You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have run. I wanted to be free, she shouted, her voice cracking. You think a gilded cage makes me yours? You think because you saved me, I owe you something. Rahl stepped closer, his fury fading into something rawer, quieter. I don't want your gratitude, Iris. I just want you alive. She stared at him, this creature who could tear monsters apart yet spoke to her like she mattered. Her lips trembled, torn between rage and confusion. Why, she whispered. Why me? Rahl hesitated. His voice dropped to a whisper that barely reached her. Because I don't understand you, and I can't stop trying to. Their eyes met, a silence charged with every emotion they refused to name. The air between them pulsed with something fierce and unspoken. Then Rahl looked away, forcing his voice to steady. You're not safe here anymore, he said. From now on, you stay close to me. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the bodies of the dead and the echoes of her heartbeat. And though Iris still swore she hated him, something in her chest had cracked. Something she couldn't put back together. The palace was quieter after the attack, but Iris could feel the tension in the air like smoke after fire. The king hadn't punished Rahl, not yet. But she knew something had changed. Every glance from a guard, every whisper in the hallway carried the same message: they were being watched. Rahl visited her less often now. When he did, his face was drawn, his eyes darker. He spent long hours locked in his laboratory, away from the throne and away from her. Curiosity gnawed at Iris's mind until one night, she followed him. Moving through the hidden passage behind her room, she reached a narrow balcony that overlooked his workroom below. The sight froze her blood. Rows of glass containers glowed faintly red. Inside them floated bodies, human bodies, pale, drained, suspended in liquid. And beside them, journals filled with symbols and equations she couldn't understand. Then she saw him. Rahl stood before one of the tanks, hands trembling. He pressed his palm against the glass and whispered, "I'm sorry." The sound of his voice, quiet, raw, didn't match the monster she imagined him to be. He turned suddenly, sensing her presence. Iris. She stepped out of the shadows, heart pounding. What are you doing? Rahl exhaled, his gaze heavy. You weren't supposed to see this. Are you experimenting on them? She asked, her voice sharp. Is this your medical research? Killing humans for science? No, his voice cracked, just slightly. I'm trying to save them. She laughed bitterly. Save them? They're dead. He moved closer, desperate for her to understand. My father ordered these experiments. He wants a way to make vampires stronger, immune to sunlight, invincible. I've been using his work to find the opposite, a cure. A way for us to live without killing. Her anger faltered. You want to stop drinking blood. I want to stop the war, he said quietly. If we can survive without humans, maybe the killing ends. Iris stared at him, this prince torn between duty and conscience. For the first time, she didn't see fangs or power. She saw a man who hated what he was. But her voice was still cold. And what happens to people like me when your father finds out what you're doing? Rahl didn't answer. His silence was enough. When she turned to leave, he said softly, Iris. I don't expect you to trust me. But don't hate me for trying to be something better. She paused at the doorway. It's not hate that scares me, she whispered. It's that I almost believe you. For the first time, Rahl looked uncertain. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, the king's spies listened, their eyes glowing with amusement. By morning, word of the prince's betrayal would reach the throne. And the king would decide that his son had finally gone too far. The throne room was silent, save for the low hum of flames burning in the golden braziers. Rahl stood before the throne, his head bowed. Beside him, 2 guards dragged Iris to her knees, iron chains biting into her wrists. The king sat tall, draped in black and crimson, his eyes cold as carved glass. My son, he said, his voice smooth but deadly. It seems you've forgotten what it means to bear our name. Rahl lifted his gaze, meeting his father's stare. If being your heir means slaughtering innocents, then I'll gladly forget. A murmur rippled through the gathered court. No one had ever spoken to the king that way, not even his generals. The king rose from his seat, his presence filling the room like a storm. You speak of innocence, he hissed, stepping closer. That girl, that thing, would slit your throat the moment you turned your back. Iris flinched but glared up at him. At least I wouldn't drain him dry like you do everyone else. The guards moved instantly, striking her across the face. Rahl's eyes flared crimson, his fangs threatening to surface. Enough, he growled. Touch her again and I'll. You'll what? The king interrupted, his tone deceptively calm. Defy your bloodline. Betray your crown for a pet. Rahl's jaw clenched. She's not a pet. The king's eyes narrowed. Then she's your weakness. He turned to the guards. Take her to the feeding pit. Let the young ones feast. Father. Rahl lunged forward, but 2 guards seized him. His power flared, shadows twisting around him, but the king raised his hand, and the magic in the room shifted, binding Rahl's strength like chains. Do not make me strip you of your title, the king warned. You may wear the crest of my blood, but I can still end your reign before it begins. Rahl's chest heaved. If you kill her, you'll lose me. The king paused, the room stilling at his words. Then, slowly, he smiled. Then perhaps I'll kill her slowly, and watch how much of yourself you're willing to lose. With a flick of his wrist, the guards dragged Iris away. She fought, kicking and screaming, her voice echoing through the marble halls. Rahl. Don't you dare let him win. Rahl fell to his knees, powerless, fury burning behind his eyes. When the doors slammed shut, the king looked down at his son. You were born to rule, Rahl, not to feel. The moment you choose a heart over a crown, you'll lose them both. He turned, his cloak sweeping across the floor, leaving Rahl trembling and broken beneath the throne's shadow. That night, the palace slept uneasily. But one sound broke the silence, the howl of a vampire prince tearing through his chains. Rahl was done being his father's heir. He would burn the palace before letting Iris die. The castle slept under a shroud of mist, the air thick with fear. But deep beneath the stone corridors, where screams never reached the surface, Iris was dragged into the feeding pit, a cavern of iron and blood. Cages lined the walls. Humans, weak, terrified, huddled in corners, whispering prayers that would never reach any god. The guards tossed her inside a cell and locked it. The sound of the key turning echoed like a death sentence. Above her, the moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, a cruel reminder of the world she could never touch. She sank to her knees, trembling. For the first time since being captured, she felt truly helpless. But somewhere above, in the dark heart of the palace, Rahl was done kneeling. He tore free from his restraints, black veins crawling up his arms, power pulsing beneath his skin. His eyes glowed with that same dangerous crimson his father once feared. 2 guards tried to stop him. They never got the chance. Their bodies hit the wall with a thunderous crack. Rahl moved like a shadow, silent but deadly. Every vampire that crossed his path fell, not out of hatred, but out of his refusal to lose her. When he reached the feeding pit, the stench of blood hit him like a wave. He saw her, Iris, on her knees, clutching the iron bars, defiant even in despair. "Rahl," she whispered when she saw him. "What are you doing here? Breaking every law that ever kept us apart." He ripped the cage open with a surge of power, the metal bending under his grip. She stumbled into his arms, weak but alive. Behind them, the alarm bells began to ring. The king's guards flooded the tunnels. "Run," he told her. "What about you?" "I'll find you." His gaze softened. "I promise." But she didn't move. Not until he pushed her toward the tunnel's exit, a narrow passage once used to dispose of the dead. "Go, Iris." She hesitated, then vanished into the shadows, her breath ragged. Rahl turned to face the guards. There were dozens. Maybe hundreds. He didn't care. The first wave lunged. His power erupted. The walls shook. Blood splattered across stone. He moved through them like a storm, unstoppable, merciless, every strike a rebellion against centuries of cruelty. At the top of the pit, the king stood watching, expression unreadable. "So this is what you've become," he said softly. "A prince who bleeds for a mortal." Rahl's chest heaved, his claws dripping with blood. "No, father. I've become what you should have been, a ruler with a soul." The king's smile was cold. "Then you're already dead." The palace doors exploded open as the king's elite, the Crimson Guard, descended upon his son. Iris, from the woods beyond the walls, heard the echoes of that battle. She turned back only once, seeing the flames rising from the castle that had caged her. Her heart ached. For him. For the chaos he unleashed. For the truth she could no longer deny, she didn't hate him anymore. The forest was cold, colder than Iris remembered. The air reeked of smoke and iron, drifting from the burning palace far behind her. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing beneath the twisted roots of an ancient tree. For hours, she didn't move. Her wrists were raw from the chains, her body trembling. But her mind was a storm. Rahl's face haunted her. The way he fought, the way he looked at her, not as a pet, but as something worth saving. She hated him for that. Hated him for making her care. Footsteps rustled nearby. Instinctively, she grabbed a sharp branch, ready to strike. A voice whispered, "Easy, we're not them." From the shadows emerged a group of humans, survivors. Dirty, thin, armed with makeshift weapons. Their leader, a woman with a scar across her neck, eyed Iris warily. "You're from the palace, aren't you?" she asked. "One of the kept." Iris nodded slowly. The woman, Mira, frowned. "Then you're lucky to be alive. Most pets don't make it out." They led her to their camp, hidden deep within the ruins of an old church. Candles flickered against broken walls, and children slept close together for warmth. It wasn't much, but it was human. Mira handed her a flask of water. "You said you escaped during the fire. That means one thing, someone started it." Iris hesitated. "He did." "Who?" "The prince." Mira froze. "The vampire prince?" Iris nodded. "He fought his own kind to save me." The survivors exchanged uneasy glances. One of the men spat on the ground. They're monsters, girl. Don't twist it. Maybe he just wanted to keep his pet alive. She didn't argue. But the memory of his eyes, the way he said go, stayed with her. That night, while the others slept, she sat by the dying fire, staring at the ashes. Why did you do it, Rahl? She whispered. Why save someone who could never love you back? Far away, in the smoldering ruins of the palace, Rahl stirred. His body was broken, his wounds deep, but he was alive. Barely. The king's soldiers had left him for dead, assuming the flames would finish what they started. But he crawled from the wreckage, every step fueled by one thought, Iris. Under the pale moonlight, his fangs bared, he whispered her name into the wind, a vow wrapped in blood and smoke. I'll find you. And somewhere, the king's spies caught the scent. The night was thick with fog and tension. The air trembled with the sound of marching, the king's army, closing in on the forest. The humans had prepared as best they could, though they knew it wasn't enough. Mira barked orders, trying to hide the fear in her voice. If they find us, we run. No fighting, no heroics. But Iris stood apart, her eyes locked on the horizon, on the faint glow of fire in the distance. She could feel him. Rahl. Something deep inside her, something she refused to name, told her he was coming. Moments later, the forest fell silent. Then, a figure emerged from the smoke, tall, blood-stained, his black hair matted, eyes burning red. Every human raised their weapons, but Iris stepped forward. Her heart pounded as he stopped a few feet away, breathing heavily. I found you, he said, voice rough, trembling from exhaustion. She stared at him, this creature who had every reason to hate her, yet had nearly died for her. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I told you I would. Before she could respond, the earth shook, the army had arrived. Dozens of vampires, armored and armed, poured into the clearing. And at their head, cloaked in crimson and gold, was the king. He smiled coldly. My son, he called out. Still chasing your pet? How pathetic. Rahl's fangs glinted. You should have killed me when you had the chance. The king drew his blade, ancient, blackened steel that hummed with dark power. Then allow me to correct that mistake. The battle erupted like thunder. Rahl met his father in a clash of blood and fury, power against power, legacy against love. The ground split beneath them, trees burst into flame. Each strike sent waves of energy tearing through the clearing. The humans scattered, fleeing for their lives. But Iris didn't run. She couldn't. She watched as Rahl fell to one knee, the king's sword piercing his shoulder. You can't protect her, the king hissed. You're no ruler, you're a curse. Rahl caught the blade, blood streaming from his hand. Maybe, he said, eyes glowing bright crimson. But I'm her curse. With a final surge of strength, he drove the sword through his father's chest. The king's scream echoed through the night, a sound of ancient power breaking. The forest went still. Rahl stumbled back, collapsing. His body was failing, the power that once protected him now fading with his father's death. Iris ran to him, falling to her knees beside his bleeding form. No, she whispered, cradling his face. Don't you dare die. He smiled weakly. Looks like I finally made peace with both halves of me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You stupid, stubborn vampire. His gaze softened. You hate me less now. Maybe. Rahl chuckled faintly. That's good enough. She leaned closer, pressing her forehead to his. No, it's not. Her lips met his, trembling, desperate, and full of everything they never said. The bond between them ignited, a surge of red light flaring through the forest. When the glow faded, his wounds were gone. His breath steady. Their blood had merged, human and vampire, rewriting what was never meant to be. He opened his eyes, silver now instead of red. What did you do? She smiled through her tears. I saved you. Mira appeared from the shadows, awestruck. The king is dead. The army's retreating. What now? Rahl stood, pulling Iris close. Now, we rebuild. No thrones. No cages. The dawn broke over the forest, the first true sunrise in centuries. And as the light touched their faces, Rahl whispered against her hair. Bound by blood, freed by love. The war ended not with victory, but with silence. The ashes of the vampire empire still smoldered, scattered across the ruins of their once glorious citadels. Where thrones had stood, grass began to grow again. Where blood once flowed, rivers ran clean. It was not peace, not yet, but it was something new. From the heart of the forest, a small settlement rose, a place where humans and vampires lived side by side, watched by a pair of rulers who refused to call themselves king or queen. Rahl and Iris. He still bore the mark of his bloodline, the ancient sigil that once meant power. But now it meant something else, change. He used his gift to heal instead of command, to bridge the divide that had nearly destroyed both races. Iris, no longer the trembling captive, had become his voice of reason, fierce, stubborn, and untamed. She taught the vampires compassion and the humans courage. Some still feared her, others worshipped her. But all listened. On quiet mornings, she would stand at the edge of the forest, watching the sunrise, the same sun the vampires once feared, now dimmed just enough for them to walk beneath it. And beside her, Rahl would take her hand, the warmth of her skin still startling against his. "Do you ever think it'll last?" she asked one morning, her gaze on the horizon. Rahl smiled faintly. "Peace." She nodded. He looked toward the light breaking over the trees, soft, golden, almost human. Peace isn't born overnight. It's built. One choice at a time. She turned to him. "And if the clans rise again?" His smile darkened. "Then they'll find I'm not my father." They stood together, silent, as the sun climbed higher. Behind them, laughter echoed from the settlement, children, both human and vampire-born, playing beneath the trees. It was fragile, imperfect, but real. And though the world would never forget what had been lost, it had finally begun to remember what it meant to live. The night still belonged to shadows. But the dawn belonged to them. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. What do you think about this story? Drop your comments below.